bears are here, and the others are coming in a few moments. So, for this morning's talk, which is the fourth morning, if I'm correct, on Monday. Right, you don't have to take me away. On Monday morning, it's when you don't live in the city or in the world, when there's work days and non-work days and traffic jams. Sometimes it's very hard to get your bearings about where you are in the week or in the month, which is so interesting. Just our lifestyles is actually what creates time. And if our lifestyles are nice and peaceful, then sometimes we don't even need to know the time, and it becomes quite natural. Those of you who ever go to over to Bodhinyana Monastery will notice that around the kitchen area you never see the parrots, not very often, or the other birds, except at lunchtime. And in the afternoon they disappear. And they're always on time for lunch, even though those birds, I've never seen them carrying a wristwatch or having a smartphone. They always seem to know what time it is when there's something to eat. So it's sometimes that we can just feel what time is. But for this morning's talk, I wanted to continue on with the simile of the 1,000-petal lotus, going inside using mindfulness and kindness in order to open up the lotus. And again, it's helpful because people like to have stages of meditation. They want to have a plan, understand where they're going to, and if it's going to be fine when they get there. And they also want to know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And so because of that, this ties into the way people view the world, of a place to get to, things to develop. But it is a skillful means, it is a bit of a trick, because you can understand the opening of the lotus. It's not going anywhere. It's being more into where you are right now, going deeper into this moment, going deeper into this body, into this mind, into this breath, into the bliss, into the nimittas, into the mind, going always deeper and deeper in to find out what's in the middle of all this. And so it's not only just a path of inquiry and investigation, but it's also a path which gives lots of happiness, which is one of the wonderful things why it's possible to do this. It's a very happy path. And I already mentioned the story of King Prasenadi going to see the Buddha and noticing that all those monks, because it's a monks' monastery, all those monks in the Jetavana monastery were all happy and smiling. And Buddha said that's because they're practicing properly and getting great insights. That's what you can expect. And it's also the story when another king, Ajatasattu, went to see the Buddha at the Veluwana, that's the bamboo grove, over in Rajagaha for the first time. And his doctor Jivaka took him there, and took him in a chariot as far as a chariot could go. And when he got to the gate of the bamboo grove, the king had to get out and walk in his slippers, or sandals, whatever you call them. And then he could go as far as the hall, and then when he got to the hall in the bamboo grove, he had to take his slippers off to get inside. And he asked Jivaka, which one is the Buddha? Because the Buddha never stood out at all. It's just, something which was obvious that this was the enlightened teacher, the Buddha. And so he pointed him out, said, and one of the pillars there facing east. And it was because of that, the Buddha there on one of the pillars facing east. That's why we had the tradition in Buddhism that all the Buddhas had to face east. And of course, when that's when the eastward facing. So when we first came here, and Ajahn Jakaro was the boss, and we built the main hall over in Bodhinyana Monastery, the obvious place to put that Buddha was where it now is, and it's facing west. know what happened? When the first senior Thai monks came over here, that was the opportunity for our Thai disciples to complain. They said, oh, you Western monks don't know what you're doing. Look, you've got the Buddha facing the wrong direction. It's facing west, not east. And this Thai monk said, it's actually a monk called Ajahn. He said, if the Buddha wasn't happy facing west, he'd turn around by himself. And that was the end of the problem. Later on, later on, when we built Jhana Grove, a very wonderful monk, Venerable Sri Panyawaro, he's over in Vihara Mendut by Yogyakarta. Now he offered the little stupas. That's how it's made out of boiled Buddha stone. So the same stone as the main monument in the center of Java. And at that time I was very respectful because apparently he also sent one over to Amawati, to Ajahn Sumedho. And he said, how big do you want it? He said, well, how big was Ajahn Sumedho's? He said, 110% the size of the ones on the top there. So I said, well, I shouldn't sort of outdo him. I'll do 108%. So it's just slightly less than Ajahn Sumedho's size, but it's 108%, because 108 is the magic number. 108, yeah, 110. It's not magic, not auspicious. But anyway, where am I going with this? Oh yeah, over in, I forgot where I was going with this now. Just Jogdaka. Sorry? Oh, facing east, yes. He also sent those two lions, which come at the entranceway. And when we installed them, it's always, never take the blame if you can pass the buck to somebody else. When Ajahn Brahmali installed them, he put you can actually see them. One is a male, one is a female, and he put them the wrong way around. So the male's on the right and the female's on the left or whatever. But that when somebody complained to me, I said, well, what do you expect? This is Australia, it's down under. The wrong way around. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, those little details there. It's the respect we give to them rather than the rituals there. But anyway, going back to the Jeta, the bamboo grove, that when the other thing with Ajatasattu was when he actually went to see the Buddha in the bamboo grove, he couldn't drive the chariot all the way there. He had to park the chariot outside and then get out of the chariot and walk. And then when he walked, he had to get out of stop walking, I'll take off his shoes, and then go barefoot into the bamboo grove hall to see the Buddha. And I always tell people all the different vehicles which we use to get into deep meditation, to metaphorically see the Buddha, is different tools for different occasions, different parts of the path. So you can use something like the breath, which is like going in a chariot. You can go to so close, but you can't go much further. You have to let the chariot go. You have to let the breath go. What comes next is this wonderful nimitta, this beautiful light. You're just watching the citta, and you're not aware of the breath at this time. The breath is just disappeared. It's off the radar. You're still breathing, but it's not what you're focusing on, because the light, the citta, is very, very intense and beautiful. And so that takes you as far as the door to the hall where the Buddha is. And it takes you to the door of these jhanas. And when you enter those jhanas, that nimitta is not there anymore. It takes you as far as it can. In each one of these vehicles, there comes a time, and it's natural, there comes a time when you have to use a more refined vehicle to go closer. And when it comes to the metaphor of going inside the jhanas to see the Buddha, that is not that far from what is in the suttas. In the Mahahatipadopama Sutta, that's the sutta of the elephant's footprints, which, interestingly, as every Sri Lankan should know, was the first teaching which the Arahat Mahinda gave to King Devanampiya. And sometimes you wonder, why did he choose that teaching? And that was where, and just in brief, the elephant's footprint simile was, if you're looking, because the King Devanampiya was hunting, if you want to find just where the elephant is, the king elephant, because the elephant Naga was one of the symbols of a Buddha. Great Naga, great being. So even though it's Nagas is usually thinking of snakes, but it's also applied to big elephants as well. So anyway, the great being, how do you find where the great being is? And even if you look at the branches high up have been torn off, that doesn't mean it's an elephant, it could be something else. Even if you see the scrapings against the trunk, that could be an elephant or something else. Even if you see, the trampling of the bushes, that could be an elephant, it could be something else. But when actually you see an elephant sitting down, you know that's where the elephant is. So just the same as a Buddha. When you get into the first jhana, that is where you experience, you find, if it were, the Buddha. Strange, but then I always remembered that the description of even the first jhana is quite a few afterwards. They said it's the experience which you have in a first jhana is Sambodhi Sukha. Sambodhi means enlightenment. And that really sort of shook me when I read that in the Pali. Enlightenment, happiness in even the first jhana. What is going on there? Because we all know it's not enlightenment, but it is that close. It gives you the first taste of the joy, the freedom of Sambodhi, enlightenment. And when you look at the elephant's footprint simile, you see, if you want to find where the Buddha sat, the four places, first, second, third, and fourth jhanas. And you know that sometimes I say this, and it's a bit sort of, no other monks say, but you justify it from the Atipadopama Sutta. If any of you want to go pilgrimage to the four holy sites, what are the four holy sites of Buddhism? Remember, don't answer. Because those who say, Lumbini, where he was born, Bodh where he was enlightened, Sanat, Deer Park, where he gave his first sermon, and Kusinara, when the Buddha passed away. Yeah, that's what people say. But the real four holy sites where the Buddha actually spent most of the time, where he really lived, not where his body lived, but where his mind would reside, were the jhanas. And that was really, when I really let my mind sort of dwell upon that and understand that, it's just like, if you really want to visit the four holy sites, you don't need to move from this spot. You don't need to get your visas to go to India or Nepal and go through all this aircraft and all this other travel through India. The four holy sites are right here. And that's from the Atipadopama Sutta. And Sambodhi Sukha, the first, is a taste of enlightenment, the happiness. Why? And again, it is because, and this was really freaky for me, and for you, I hope, if ever you attain a jhana, that when you're in a jhana, your experience, you can't feel your body, it's a pure experience of the sixth sense, the mind. Your experience is no different than the experience the Buddha had. You're the same. Obviously, when you come out, you're not a Buddha, but you touch how the Buddha felt in those jhanas. And when you realize that, wow, that was goosebump. When you can feel what it's like to be a Buddha today, 2,600 years afterwards. Just in those jhanas. That's why they're amazing experiences. So, back to the... sorry, I get inspired. I inspire myself sometimes. Sometimes when I tell even a joke, I really get into it. I asked Ajahn, and he said that he was very concerned about me once when I told a joke and I was laughing at my own joke so much that I was choking. I couldn't breathe. And he was really scared about me. But no, that's one thing. Getting inspired about some of these stories, getting inspiration is tremendous. So anyway, that in that Ajatasattu story, the Ajatasattu, first time he'd seen the Buddha, he said, "No, why are you a monk? You could, look, you've got leadership credentials, you're very powerful, that, you are royalty. You could be just enjoying the high life like me," said Ajatasattu. And that's when the Buddha said, "Look, I have much more pleasure than you do." For a king, that was just really confronting. What do you mean? And that's when the Buddha said, "Can you sort of sit in bliss for 7 days?" And no, I can't do that. And then the Buddha started to talk about the fruits of the practice of the holy life. And the interesting point was, and the reason I'm saying this now, is that because in every part of that path is greater and greater happiness and joy. It is a path of joy, because that was the whole context for the Buddha demonstrating to Ajatasattu with all the power, with all the wealth, the happiness of a king, of a rich person who can do what they want whenever they want, is nothing compared to the happiness you get from the holy life. And starting off just like with having inspiration and faith in something which is deserving of inspiration and faith. You see monks or nuns, and you see practitioners, you see they're actually they're worthy of respect, they're inspiring, they're good leaders, you check them out, they don't hide things. You could take photographs of them when they're meditating, so-called in solitude on the stupa, not knowing, it's okay, I'm not doing anything wrong. Oh, but be careful, that stupa. Because I was told, I think many of the Indonesians would know this, that if you go to the rear one, Borobudur, up in Java, and you go to the top story, the tradition is that if you can put your hand inside those holes and that you can actually reach and touch the Buddha inside, then you will find true love. So you see all these people, not Buddhists, going up there, putting their hands inside to try and see if can find true love. So if you've already got a partner and I catch you doing this, you'll be busted. If you see one of my monks doing that, or the nuns, so Veda will go to me. That's what you're supposed to do. Put your hand in there, you find true love. If you can touch it. If you can't touch it, then forget about it. But anyway, over in keeping like even inspiration, being open and seeing this actually works, does actually give you this happiness, this joy of trust. And that's why the Pali word is called sampasada. It means like joy, but also faith. It's halfway between the two. And that's sort of the joy, inspiration, confidence. It's a happiness. It's a bit of a dodgy happiness, uncertain happiness, because sometimes people have faith in the wrong things. So, I wasn't planning to tell this little simile, but it fits in now. Of all the hindrances, it's the one which is hardest to describe is the fifth hindrance of doubt. doubt, is this the right path to jhanas? Because some people say even jhanas aren't important. But is this a jhana anyway? Are they? Is it really true what Ajahn Brahm just said, that when you experience a jhana, it's not like experience what it's like to be a Buddha for a little while? And even though the sutras say that, but are you misreading the sutras, Ajahn Brahm? Is this the right path? Are these your right teachers? So a lot of people, it's their right to question that. So, but what is the answer? How do you know you're going in the right direction? And that's where I use the simile, because you have to find similes from real life, and if it's your own life, it's far more present to you. And that was the time when I was a student. Number one, I was legitimately poor. And number two, I just liked sort of solitude. Not because I was running away, but because I just enjoyed it. And so most of the vacations, summertime, after getting a job doing all sorts of stupid things, getting a bit of money, and then I'd go up to Scotland, in the very far north of Scotland, and the Highlands, and then just take a tent, a sleeping bag, and just stay out in the mountains, for days on end. You could always find some water there, you boil it, and a tent, and I could live up there for days. And I found, talking to people, this thing called Scotch broth. It was like dried peas, dried barley, dried rice, all this dried stuff, which was so light to carry, and quite nutritious. And you can stay up there for days, just very light, and just some water, boil it up, and then that was your breakfast, lunch, and tea. So I had a great time up there. But every now and again, you check into the youth hostels, the other cheap places you can stay for, a shower and get some supplies. And then, in a youth hostel, I forget where it was there, but the far north of Scotland, the hostel warden, who was a local man, just asked me, do you want to come up and walk up one of the mountains today? And so just a bit of exercise. And so walked up the mountain. It was a beautiful sunny day, just like today. Actually pretty similar weather, a bit chilly, but really nice and warm in the middle of the day. Got up to the top of the mountain, sat down, you just take an orange, which was light and just nice to eat to give yourself a bit of a sugar boost, good some fresh vitamin C. And then eat that, have a chat, and then he wanted to go back because he had to prepare the youth hostel. But I was still lots of energy. There was another mountain a little way away, so I said, let's go up the other mountain first. Nah, one mountain a day is good enough for me, so I went up the second mountain by myself. And I never thought it would be dangerous at all, because a lovely sunny day, but I was warned before not to do that, not to travel alone in wilderness areas. And I realized why soon afterwards, because about an hour later, just approaching the top of the second mountain, I did see the clouds come in from the ocean. Well, I never imagined they would come in so fast and that they would drop onto the mountain where I was hiking. And it was very, very thick mist. And there's no exaggeration. You put your hand up and you couldn't see the end of your hand. It was very thick. And I was on the top of a mountain in thick mist. And people had told me, they were Scottish people, I think they were just pulling my leg. Oh, there's English people, very stupid. Sometimes they get lost in the mountain for days. And I realized it wasn't a joke. They were telling the truth. And I was lost. I had no sense of direction at all. You always think you have, but you don't. And I knew that because I was walking, thinking I was retracing my steps, and I stopped just in time where there was a really vertical cliff going straight down. And when I got back, I looked at the Ordnance Survey maps, and there was only one place there was a cliff like that, and it was totally the opposite direction. Completely 180 degrees opposite to the direction I thought I was going. So because of that I got scared. one step and I would be dead. Literally. So, wondering what I was going to do next. You were lost in the mist, in a very dangerous situation, not knowing how to escape. That is like doubt. Lost in the spiritual mist of so many teachers telling you to go this way and go that way. And it is dangerous. What can you do? So at least I had presence of mind to use science. My science was the law of gravity. Water always goes downhill. So I found a little brook, followed that brook until it joined another little brook and became a stream, followed that stream. Whichever way that stream was meandering, I would follow it faithfully, because I know it was always going down, 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 down. Remember, I couldn't see very far, maybe a meter at most if it was the light part of the fog. So I followed that water as it got other little rivulets, sort of came into it, got thicker and thicker, bigger and bigger, and then I got underneath the mist. I was now below the clouds. Once I was below the clouds, you could see everywhere. It was quite bright underneath the mist. In the mist, you were just literally befogged. But underneath the mist, I could see where I was going, and so I could start walking safely to go back to the hostel. And I use that as the way what doubt is and the way to overcome that doubt. I don't know really what you're doing. Is this the right way to meditate, the wrong way to meditate, the right path, the wrong path? All you need to do is to find a stream, something which will be a guide for you. In this particular case, it's like peace, happiness, even like awareness. If those things are increasing, then you're going in the correct direction. If this is a path of happiness and freedom, if you feel more peace, more happiness, more resilience, less anger, less wanting of things, then you must be going in the correct direction. And that is adapted from the advice which the Buddha gave to Venerable Gautami's namesake, the first bhikkhuni, Mahapajapati, who asked for a teaching, and the Buddha told his foster mother, if it increases more, goes to more peace, more stillness, closer to renunciation, letting go, nibbana, then you know it must be the Dhamma, it must be the teachings of a Buddha. So he actually sees it going in the right direction. So if this meditation is making you more angry, more upset, more stupid, less resilient, then you know you're going in the wrong direction. You know, sometimes that on those 3 months retreats we do during the rains retreat, sometimes there was this one gentleman and he said, I'm getting nowhere, it's not working. And that's when we needed something, I think, for maintenance here. So on purpose I sent him to the shopping centre in Armadale. I said, we really need to get these things, would you mind? He said, okay. And it wasn't to get those things. I could get somebody else to bring those things to the monastery. I sent him there to give him the experience of a shopping centre again, after about 6 weeks staying here. And when he came back, he said, that place is mad, it's crazy. He said, but you used to live in those places almost. I said, oh yeah, maybe I am developing something. Because he never had any reference points to see just how more peaceful and calm and wise he was actually becoming. So in order to find you are going in the correct direction, sometimes when you go home, and see what your wife says about you, see what your husband says. And can't go past that story. This gentleman, this is the old days, he always wanted to go on a weekend meditation retreat. Just a weekend, not much. So he'd asked his wife, darling, can I go on a weekend meditation retreat? She said, of course you can't. It's busy. We've got all the chores to do. You've got to take the kids to sport. We've got to fix up the garage. So he said, okay. So he stayed. But he was persistent. You don't need to argue, just be persistent. Wear them down. It's like the mosquito sort of technique. Just keep on buzz, 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 okay. So after a while, another retreat came up. Can I go? He said, no. You promised to clean the gutters. Okay. No, you promised my mother-in-law's coming. No, we've got to sort of go and get some new curtains. No. So many times, she said no. And then one day, she got so frustrated at her husband. He said, when he asked, is there a retreat on this weekend? Okay, you go to your stupid retreat and be selfish. Off you. And he went. He took that as a yes. Or something like that. And so off he went to his retreat. And when he came home, he was such an improved husband. She noticed it straight away. And so when it came to the next retreat, he told us, he never needed to ask. She gave him the money and sent him off. And it's true. Don't call it meditation retreat, call it husband improvement camp. Whatever you call it. Because it does work. You become more sensitive, more happy, just more peaceful. It's worth it. So you can see that things are happening. You're going in the right direction somewhere. Well, that's actually how we overcome this doubt. But one of the things to know it's going in the right direction is a simple thing like happiness. More happiness, more joy comes up in your life. And of course, I already mentioned that story of those prison in England when they thought I was on drugs, because that's the only way they could explain such happiness. But there was also a couple of years ago, there was a lady here, she was from Sydney, executive, and she told me just coming here she had to beg, and this is her words, beg and grovel from her boss, to get the time off. But eventually the boss gave in, and so she came here. And when she went back, I think she sent me an email, and it was really, I should keep these emails, but I didn't. Really funny email. She said, as soon as I got back to work on the Monday after the retreat was finished, somewhere in Sydney, my boss took one look at me and said, what drugs are they giving you in Perth? I don't care what they were, but next time you bring me back some. She quoted that in the email, because the boss had seen that something had changed. Now this, one of her executives was really peaceful and happy. And it actually works. Now that is something which you can't hide. You can say, oh, I'm much wiser. Oh, I understand more. But a lot of that is gomayang. But the smile, the happiness, that you can't really fake. So this is why this is a path of happiness. So in that teaching of the Samanya-pada Sutta, what the Buddha taught to King Ajatasattu, he said even not just inspiration gives you happiness, but then you start to practice your precepts. Not because you have to, because you want to, because it makes a lot of sense. When we used to do those weekend retreats in Safety Bay on Penguin Road, I remember just in the room, just looking out through the window, and because there was a church next door, it's really very nice that we actually get our own place, because just going on off a tangent, Bianca might remember this, that in that retreat centre in North Perth, in the Redemptorist Monastery, those days that we didn't have our own amplifiers, so there was a radio mic. And then I remember on a Sunday morning I was giving a talk, and then the priest's assistants, they ran in and said, turn it off, turn it off. I said, why? Because it was the same frequency as in the main church. And they were doing a sermon, but they were listening to Ajahn Brahm. And they thought that we did it on purpose. I think, no, they didn't. It's just a mistake. I was tempted to say, well, if it's God's will that you listen to Ajahn Brahm, it's God's will. Okay. Anyway, go back to safety. I looked through the window, and there's these two gentlemen, elderly gentlemen, and they were shaking hands after the morning service in church. And I saw them, and one said to the other, be good, and the other one replied, that's no fun. And I thought, there's something terribly wrong there. That to feel that you have to be bad to have a happy time. And that keeping precepts, being good, is just miserable. And that was totally against what it said in the Samanyapala Sutta, totally against, the meaning of my own life. Every time that you indulge, it's not happiness, not in the long term. Being good, being kind, being gentle, looking after yourself, serving others, that gives you so much happiness and joy. It is called Anawajasukha, the faultless happiness. You look at what you've done, how you've served, and you're happy. It actually raises the level of your happiness. And this is not what you believe. It's not, keep your precepts, don't lie, don't indulge, and be kind to others, be generous, be compassionate, be forgiving, be sensitive to the needs of others. It's not so you can be a goody-goody and go to heaven in your next life. You feel the results right now. If you're happy, your life is worthwhile. You're actually serving and being of assistance to others. You get joy out of that. So, that's the first level of joy in the Samanyapala Sutta, the fruits of the holy life, the fruits of the practice. And then you practice restraint. Restraint of the senses. Restraint of the senses means you don't look at anything which is going to create like lust or greed or excitement for the senses. And if there's something which offends you or scares you, you just don't pay attention to that. You just pay attention to the positive side. It's the old two bad bricks in the wall simile. If somebody does something wrong, they make a noise, you see them talking on their mobile phone, you don't focus on their faults to make you upset and angry. You thought, poor thing, it must be something really, really important while they're using their mobile phone today. It must be something just they're snoring so loud, or people at least are having a rest. So you restrain the senses from anger, ill will, and also wanting. So if you can actually do that, restrain those two, you get this wonderful Abhayasekara Sukha, the happiness of basically based from restraining the senses, not indulging them, but actually keeping them home. That's a happiness, a joy. And once you start experiencing that, the next happiness comes for, you can understand how it works because you're not encouraging negativity or wanting. Those 5 hindrances start to disappear and you start to experience the joys of the meditation, the nimittas and the jhanas. Ever and ever increasing happiness and joy. That is the path according to the way the Buddha talked about it in the Samanyapala Sutta, the gradual training. And I love that little way of explaining. It's like it is a path. And you know you're on the right path because there's ever-increasing happiness and joy. Which is one of the reasons why if you're getting miserable and tired and pain here and pain there, there's something wrong. You're not looking after your body. You're pushing too hard. If you're getting really dull and just dreary, it means you're eating too much or you're just sleeping too much. But you just find that middle way and it feels really happy and peaceful. And how that actually works with the 1,000-petal lotus the deeper you go into that lotus, the more fragrant and beautiful the petals are. You go in there and they're incredibly beautiful. Never seen anything like that before. So I was talking earlier about that 1,000-petal lotus, of starting off with the outermost petals, which is not really beautiful at all. And your body aching, burping, like I just did a moment ago. And then you go inside to time, which is still sort of troublesome. And then you go to the present moment petal. Now you're actually getting into some nice lotuses. Eckhart told us the power of now. Right now, this is beautiful. Just being here. Now, we get free from so many burdens. It's just so difficult just being actually it's not anymore, an ex-spiritual director. And but I don't know if I can get away with it that much longer. I am praying. But being away from being a secretary, being away from being a librarian, being free until you get back again somewhere. But at the moment, right now, you're free. So just enjoy it. It's not going to last. But while it's here, just get into it. Being in the present moment is just no worries, no baggage from the past. It's just so much bliss. It's a beautiful layer of petals. But then that starts to open up, as I said, and inside the now, you find the breath, it just happens. Just watching the breath come in, go out, in, go out. 'Cause it's the only thing left moving. And you don't need to, I didn't mention this before, please, you don't have to be concerned where the breath is being observed, the tip of the nose or the bridge of the nose or your left earlobe or your big toe. It doesn't matter as long as you know the breath. That is one of the reasons why when I teach meditation for the first time to people, I never tell them to watch the tip of the nose. I say close your eyes, watch your breath in and out 3 times, and after the 3rd out breath, open your eyes. And everybody can do that. But the point of the exercise is to ask them, how did you know? The breath was going in, the breath was going out. They all know, but they don't particularly watch the tip of the nose or the abdomen or anything. They just know, natural. That's what happens if you do this way of meditation. You just get to the present moment, just being here, being kind, being gentle to this moment. Open the door of your heart to this moment. Just being here, kind, aware. And then you find you're aware of the breath. It comes naturally. And then aware of the breath, and that sort of opens up, not just knowing the point, it just develops as you get to know more and more of the breath. Beginning of the in-breath to the end of the in-breath. Because you're more aware, you're relaxed. Your brain is starting to get some power, so you can see more. It's just like, where I grew up, in Thailand, when you had a shave in the morning, you didn't have any lights or these great mirrors which magnify everything. So, be so quick to have a shave, boom, 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 finished. But nowadays, people put me up in these hotels. And you see, you turn on the lights and this big mirror over here, every bit of stubble you can see. So you're scraping it again and again and again and again. Because now I can see it. Before it wasn't really a problem. Now I can see it. You can't be so sloppy anymore. when it's nice and dark, it doesn't really matter. I'm a lazy man. That's what men are. Well, not all men. I like an easy life. Actually, these days, sometimes you see the photographs of these famous people. They've all got stubble. So stubble is cool. I was way ahead of my time. That's the trouble. But anyway, where are we going? With the mindfulness, gets so strong you can see everything. So that's where you see all the parts of the breath. And at the same time, it gets delightful. It's enjoyable. And then you're getting the joy coming up. And that's the joy of the sea, a world, and the grain of sand, a heaven, and a wildflower. That'll happen to you. You look at the bamboo floor. Wow. Look at that. Incredible. All the different browns, shapes, striations. And after a while you just linger on that, and it's incredible. I've been sitting there for the last 3 or 4 days and never noticed how amazingly beautiful it is. You don't need to go to the Louvre or any other great art gallery. When the mind opens up, whatever you see is amazingly beautiful. See one of those little centipedes, not centipedes, so millipedes. Amazing little animals. So what happens is the mind becomes really aware. What you see is absolutely beautiful. You get happiness. You get stronger. Shows you're getting on the right path. The happiness, the joy, the bliss, the freedom, that is starting to develop. So you don't have any doubts. And as the breath gets so happy, it goes inside the breath. And inside the breath has done its job. That was the chariot. And now you go into the realm of the mind, this beautiful chitta. And of course that just blows you away sometimes. So beautiful, so powerful. At first it can be just an ordinary little light. And here we use Ajahn Chah's simile of the still forest pool. Not the way it's written in the books. This is not how I heard it from him. I was there with Ajahn Chah for 9 years. How I heard it was he would, when he went on these called it Tudong. Tudong is not really the right word for it, because Tudong is a practice of asceticism. It's, the Sri Lankans have got it, the right word. It's charika, which is wandering all over the place. And it was, you weren't wandering just for solitude. So you go in the forest or the jungles or the mountains, and just, of course, over in a place like Sri Lanka or Thailand, you can just walk anywhere. You'd always get some food. Some will give you enough to eat for the day in your alms bowl, and then you go off again. It was amazing freedom. Sometimes whenever I start telling these stories, you get so nostalgic about just taking your robe and your bowl, and you had your mosquito net umbrella, and you just walk with no destination. It was as close as you can be to being a bird, with only the weight of your wings, your bowl and your robe being carried. And you'd walk and get to any crossroads, and then, should I go left, should I go right, should I have a sit down or go back again? You had no map, no plan, no place to go. Every place you could always get a meal. You'd have just a place you can set up your tent and mosquito net and have a nice rest or meditate. It was the most freedom you've ever sort of felt physically. So I love that time. But anyway, then you would find what Ajahn Chah taught us. Find a nice lake or river, because you had to bathe, and get some water. You'd have a filter, you'd filter that water for drinking in a little water flask, and you'd put up your mosquito net and your little umbrella, and you'd sleep underneath that. But sometimes Ajahn Chah said, don't put it really close to the water's edge, because if you did, the animals would actually disturb you, or they'd be prevented from coming out to drink, because that was their place to wash and to drink as well. So he always counselled 15, 20 meters away from the edge of the water. And he said he used to sit there sometimes with his eyes open, just to watch the animals come out to play by the forest pool. And he had to be very still, because the animals were far more afraid of human beings than human beings were afraid of things like tigers or bears. More tigers were killed by humans than humans by tigers. We were the most dangerous animal in the forest. So if the tiger or the elephant, they thought there was a human being there, they may have been so thirsty that they would not come out. So you had to sit really still for the animals to come out. And they would come out, sniff, and the nose and the ears were how they usually detected human beings. They had to be very still. And then they wouldn't see you. They wouldn't know you were there. And then they'd come out, and sometimes with their young, to play. You know what Ajahn told me? He said, sometimes the elephants, the baby elephants, they would always be a bit playful and inquisitive. So he's always told me, he said, if the baby elephant finds you, and they'd put their little baby trunk under the mosquito net. And he said, Ajahn Brahm, all the other monks, don't play with it, because the mother elephant would be so protective, she'd probably sort of kill you, squash your mosquito net with you inside of it, because they were afraid to protect their kid. So they always said the tip of the elephant's nose, trunk, is always very sensitive, so bang it. And then it'll run away and you'll be safe. I thought, that's really cruel. Fortunately, that never happened to me, but I always remember that just in case. But anyway, this is what you learn as forest monks. But anyway, sometimes you sit there, and Ajahn Chah used to say, sit there so quietly, all the animals would come out and play, and it was delightful to watch them, only if you were still. That's like nimittas. You've got to be so still, then the animals, the nimittas, will come out to play by your still forest pool, your mind. Then, that after the normal animals would come out, if you're really still, then the most amazing animals would come out, so incredibly beautiful, but so shy. And I remember him saying these were animals his teachers and his family never told him existed. So rare, but so amazingly beautiful. And when they would come out to play by the pool, he had to keep so quiet, so still. If he moved, they would run away again. That was his metaphor for the jhanas. Rare, incredible, beautiful things which will come out and play in your still mind, only when you're incredibly still. You move, and they're away, they're gone again. So that's a very beautiful, evocative simile for what the jhanas are. Just awareness and kindness, and just let it open up, but you be still. So what happens is, you see this nimitta coming up first of all, just the rough ones first of all, and then just be still, don't do anything, and then the gorgeous ones come out. And those, for example, sometimes the nimittas, I don't know how many times, it's up here somewhere, or just on the edge, and you go up to look at it and it runs away. You have to wait for it to come to you. You just sit here, and if it's not centered, don't try and center it, just let it come in front of you. It's almost like it's testing you out. Are you ready for me yet? And then, again, just if it's not so bright, if it's a little bit sort of dull or dirty, don't worry about that, because I have given you the trick, the loophole. You don't need to remember that. That will now happen naturally. The weird part of these states, or one of the weird parts of it, is that you don't need to give yourself instructions. They have been pre-programmed now. Some of the things which I did when you got nimittas coming up and how you dealt with them, I thought I was very skillful the way I dealt with these nimittas, but then I look back and say, no, I heard that from somebody. It was Ajahn Chah. At the time, I never really registered it. I never took notes about it. I thought it never made any sense. It was way beyond me. But then I realized that program had been put in there, only ready to kick in once the right situation, the circumstances were appropriate. Just like all those seeds in the middle of the desert in Australia, they're just latent, they're lying there, dormant until the rain comes, and then they germinate. all these little teachings. You may not agree with them, you may think they're useless, they're nothing to do with you, but now they're inside of you. You will find when nimittas start coming up, so will those teachings. You don't need to remember, I must do this, I must do that. It's already there. But what happens is you just automatically go to the beautiful part of it. And it gets more and more beautiful. An example was, I remember just one of these times, the nimitta was quite clear and beautiful, but it was complicated. It was a nimitta, a mental image of like rolling hills and trees and a little river in the center of it. It was very delightful, but quite detailed and complicated. So I just was looking and saw there was something sparkling there. There was a dewdrop on the edge of one leaf. And all I needed to do was just to let the mind, it did it by itself, just go onto that leaf, into that dewdrop, and the sparkle just expanded, become this amazing nimitta. That was just from something which was quite complex. There's always something beautiful. There's always something twinkling, sparkling. Just let your mind go to that, and it'll get drawn in, and it'll become just a full-blown nimittas. And of course, I did mention, these aren't seen with your eye. So if they get very brilliant, don't be afraid you're going to go blind. This doing lots of nimitta work is not the reason I have to wear glasses. It's just old age. But it's not seen with the eye. It can be as intense as anything. And fine. And the other one, of course, is the joys. They're very powerful. And this is an important part of the practice, because sometimes you realize you can't control these things. These are huge. They're much more powerful than you are, or what you think you are. So people get a bit scared they can't control things. That fear of letting go. Letting go of control. That's one of the reasons I use a metaphor. It is like, and it's not a bad metaphor, like you're driving along a busy freeway, I'm in the passenger seat, you're driving, really heavy traffic, but going quite fast, and I tell you, take your hand off the steering wheel, feet off the pedals, now. The car will crash. Take your feet off the pedals, hands off the steering wheels, let go of control. Now, this is only a metaphor. Do not do that if you're really driving me to Brahmavamso. But actually, that's a great metaphor, because I remember this couple of retreats ago, this lady was getting some deep meditation. She dreamt about that. She had this dream at night that she was driving a car, quite fast. I was in the passenger seat, and we were coming to a cliff. And she was wanting to sort of steer the car or take her feet off the pedals, and I turned around and said, no. Hands off the steering wheel, feet off the pedals. We're going over the cliff. Hand off the steering wheel, feet off the pedals. This is in her dream, and she did. We went right over the cliff, hurtling down to certain death, really fast, going down the cliff. And she noticed at the bottom of the cliff there was a road, but the road went maybe about 5 meters and had a sharp right-hand turn. And so when we hit the bottom, the car landed well, and then she wanted to get a hand on the steering wheel to turn left, turn right, sharp bend. No. So hand off the steering wheel, feet off the pedals. And so she was really scared, going down, and we hit the ground, went to the bend, and the car automatically turned to the right and just went calmly down the bend at the bottom of the hill, of the cliff. See, that was so cool. And I said, yeah, good. So I've already got into your dreams now. You can do it there. Now do it when you're meditating. So that's what it's a test of letting go. Because these things are powerful. And you know what is powerful? Because we have this idea of self-preservation. Oh, it's too much for me. I can't control this. I can't handle this. It's like being put in the in charge of a Ferrari sports car, and you've only just learned how to drive a scooter. So it's a bit powerful for you, but after a while you learn how to do it by letting go. It does it by itself. And that's the wonderful thing about these states. You are disappearing. You're going, you're vanishing. Which is a wonderful thing to do. I've had enough of me after 66 years. Instead, you vanish, disappear. And this is part of why these big meditations happen. You try and control it, make it happen, and you stuff up. You just let it go, and these incredible, beautiful states of mind come. You have to be still, like Ajahn. The still forest pool, and amazing animals come out like you've never heard before. They're powerful, they're beautiful. You have a wonderful time. You are perfectly safe. That's like getting so close into the heart of the lotus. In Anapanasati, that's Samadhahang Chittang, and it is Sampasadanang Chittang, bringing it joy, happiness, and calming it down, being in that nimitta stillness, and it gets stronger. The two are the same. It still is, the more powerful, the more brilliant it becomes, the more brilliant. Actually, sometimes when it gets brilliant, you have to have some skills to make it still. And of course, the colours, not like you see in the real world, as I said the other day. And to show the range of nimittas, I love telling this story. About 2 or 3 years ago, I think Venerable Nito remembers me telling this during my range retreats. I had this really strong nimitta. It was like a yellow, but yellow, like golden yellow, like really powerful. Not like yellows anyone can paint. Always the case, more yellow than yellow. But it never lasted. The reason is because I recognized it straight away. It wasn't like a beautiful light. It was actually an image of Garfield the cat. I recognized it straight away. I've been reading the cartoons in the newspapers too much. And I burst out laughing in my cave. And that was the end of the meditation that day. Very few people have had the Garfield nimitta. It was true. No exaggeration. Really beautiful, really still, but as soon as I just burst out laughing, came out straight away. I had to tell all my friends about it because it was so funny. But that was really deep yellow. But anyway, if you don't get that funny stuff, the usual nimittas, easy. And then what happens is, because even they become very powerful and very still. Beautiful light. What happens when things become still? They vanish. Because the brain, the mind only notices things which move. The light vanishes. You go in to the center of the nimitta. And that's where the first jhana is. Bliss. Like you've never had before. That's what the Buddha said, Sambodhisukha. That's big stuff. And if a fellow who I thought belonged in Incarnate Prison Farm could do that, you can. If you have the courage to let go. Take your feet off the steering wheel. Yeah, and the hands off the pedals. That's the opposite way around. But you know what I'm saying. And it's amazing, this is what happens. So when those happen, but the problem is these days that, our greed, our spiritual craving is so much these days that people just manufacture those. They want them so much. So there are standards that if you are got into a jhana, a real jhana, you can't hear anything, you can't think. The verbalization of the mind is stopped. They come out afterwards, not an ache or a pain in the body. You feel really so great. Hindrance is gone for a long time. Can't get angry. Not really worried about anything. No dullness, no restlessness. Poised, powerful. So that's what happens. You go deep into the lotus. You can't do that. You just have to let it happen. Then it occurs. So that gives you something interesting for this morning. And any questions, interviews, or this evening, because I've gone over time. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. There we go.